Hey everybody. Uh, just wanted to share a little video with you and talk about the book of Job for a few minutes. I keeping my voice down just because I'm in a quiet place right now, but not like there's any monsters that'll get me if I raise my voice too loud, but uh man, that joke did not seem to land very well. But yeah, anyways, just want to talk a little bit about the book of Job because I think it's an amazing book, and hopefully a book that can inspire us will also give us uh, a sober-minded attitude at life and at uh, God, and how we uh, can relate to God and still remain uh, faithful and steadfast in times of hardship and suffering. And I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about in Job is well, just the story of what happened to him. So Job was a man who God valued, who God really saw that he was a good person. He was blameless in God's sight. And Job was also a very wealthy person. And at the time of Job's life, which uh, we're not really sure when that was, it could have been as early as the time of Abraham, or it could have been sometime later in the exile. But I think most scholarship uh, looks thinks that Job happened in an earlier date, but it was possibly written after the exile. So there's speculation there. But anyways, he was a good person, a rich person, had a beautiful family. He uh, his wealth was measured in his livestock, in the amount of animals that he had, and yeah, just really had an amazing life. And all of a sudden, one day he was at home, and every you know uh, everything just blew up in his face. He had all these messengers come, one right after another, telling him that there was a raid on his livestock, and all of his livestock were stolen. There was another raid that ended up killing his servants, so he lost all of his servants. And then there was a natural catastrophe that uh, collapsed his home on all of his children, and all of his children had died. And the first thing that he did in the midst of all this uh, horrible news was to pray and worship God, and just understand that these this terrible calamity happened still within God's love, and that he just trusted God, even though it seemed like God had just dealt him a severe blow. And uh, shortly after this, he he received severe sores, and he suffered physically, and I think he suffered spiritually and mentally as well. He was suffering in many different ways, and uh, his suffering was so deep that he even when he his only escape, he felt, was to go to sleep. But then when he would go to sleep, he would have these terrible nightmares, and it was like this thick cloud of darkness was in front of him, that uh, he I mean, he could still speak. He still had his wisdom, and that was another thing about Job, was he was a very wise person. He was the type of person that, you know, he would walk into a room and everybody would just shut up and listen to him, because he he was filled with wisdom, and I think filled with the Holy Spirit, and he just had a lot of knowledge. But then now at this point, people would who used to listen to him would mock him and laugh at him and turn away from him. And I mean, he was now like this outcast because he was covered with all these horrible looking sores, and his family, he just bore all the marks of a cursed person, of a cursed man. And at this point, his friends came up to him to come and comfort him, and as they saw him coming from far away, they began weeping because they saw his pain and his suffering. And they spent an entire week just not even talking to him. not knowing what to say, but just being with him to comfort him. And after this week passes by, his friends start discussing with him and trying to comfort him, but they end up, because he bears all these marks of a cursed man, they're trying to figure out why, why these things have happened to him. And of course, they know God's good, and they know he's all powerful creator of everything. He defines what's good, and he also created everything. And he's a perfect judge, and he judges evil and wickedness. And they know these things, and they see Job bearing all these horrible things, and they start wondering, what did you do? What was your sin that God has struck you like this? And Job doesn't know, and he has this long drawn out discussion, argument, and all of this is happening in really high level Hebrew poetry and wisdom literature. And so his friends are really wise. They have a lot of amazing things to say. They have good doctrine, it seems like, and but they are missing something. And I think we having the story of Job, we have something that they didn't have at this time. We have a glimpse into what happened to Job in the spiritual sense. So like at the beginning of Job, you're given this picture of Satan, of the story of why this happened to Job. And it happened because God was trying to prove to Satan that Job was a good man, that Job was somebody that God had vindicated. And he says, he points out Job to Satan as an example as a good example. And Satan just, Satan wanted to accuse Job and tell God, no, he's not really who you think he is. He's actually a terrible person. And if you strike him, if you take away the things that you've given him, those are the reasons he loves you. But if you take those things away, he won't love you anymore. He'll curse you. And so then God gives all this power to Satan to destroy Job. So Satan has so much power over Job's life, and he hits him with the first wave, which is all of his possession and his family taken away from him in one day. And then that's not enough for Satan. And I think it's good to point out too, like, God gives everything in Job's life into Satan's power and control to be able to attack him. And Satan goes to the furthest possible extreme that he can in causing harm. The harm that he wants to cause Job to is not just physical harm. He ultimately wants Job to spiritually fail. That's his goal. His goal is not just to hurt Job. His goal is to destroy Job's relationship with God and disinherit his eternal life too. I think that's Satan's biggest goal. But I think at this point he causes the most pain for Job in that first wave that he possibly can. I don't think he had to destroy his family. I don't think he had to destroy, everything that Job had. And then the second wave to press it in farther on his life and hurt his body. And there's just so much pain that he causes. So his friends see all this. They don't know, and Job doesn't know, that this happened in the spiritual realm between God and Satan. And so they're trying to figure out through their doctrine and through their understanding why this is happening. And Job is as you look through the discourse, you can see Job's suffering. It needs an explanation. He's looking for an explanation from God for why this has happened. And I think that's understandable. And at the end of the day, I look at, a lot of times people in churches will do this too. If you're having a bad day or a bad week or bad month or bad year, people will kind of judge you for it, and they'll like, what's going on? Where are you at with God? If you're sad or something, or if you've suffered, uh, there are Christians who will think that you're not in a good place with God, and they'll judge you, and they they don't understand that deep, immense suffering is a part of the Christian faith, and that's why we have the story of Job. There's so much more to the book of Job. It's a very complicated book, but at its base level, it's showing that suffering is a part of the human experience, and deep, deep suffering does not mean that a person is under God's judgment. Sometimes it does, but it's not always the case. And that was a mistake of Job's friends to think that that's what was going on. But ultimately, I think Job is this picture, not of a prophet, not of a king, not of a not of a priest, but a picture of somebody who suffered, that was going to be fulfilled in Jesus. And you'll see in the book of Job pictures of some of the sufferings that Jesus faced, and the depth of suffering, of human suffering, that I think it's a picture of hell too. What Job was facing was like hell, some of the descriptions, and it just shows the depth of what Jesus suffered as well. And so not only did Jesus fulfill the role of prophet, priest, and king, he also fulfilled the role of the suffering man, the figure of grief and pain. And that's who you see when Pilate brings him in front of the Jews who are putting him to death. He says, "Behold the man," and right there you have Jesus, the picture of grief and pain and suffering. And in Job you get that shadow of this sufferer. And of course, when Jesus was on the cross, in Deuteronomy it says, "Everyone who hangs from a tree is cursed." So Jesus on the cross, to the people of that time, he would not have looked like a person who was exalted by God. He would have looked like a person who was cursed by God. And that was what the Pharisees were thinking when they saw him there. They're like, you who said you would tear down the temple and build it again in 3 days, come down from the cross and we'll believe in you. So they're, mocking him because he's this cursed man. And he was a cursed man there. He took upon himself the curse of us all. And I think that's the point of Job. The biggest point was to show the future of what Jesus was going to go through. But yeah, I just wanted to share some thoughts on Job. So let me know what you think in the comments. Much love.